A brutal clash with potentially hundreds dead after riots broke out between pro-something and anti-something groups this week. We'll have more out of the volatile area that conflict is probably taking place in. And later, still think the elderly can't enjoy K-pop? Well, we've got 3 different studies that all agree with you. From The Onion and Onion Public Radio, this is The Topical. I'm Leslie Price, and if this isn't the news, then I don't know what is. Stay with us. A rash of violence between pro-something and anti-something groups has broken out somewhere over the past few days, and it may be coming to a head. To talk about the escalated tension between those two groups, we're joined now by OPR reporter Charles Dearborn.
Thanks, Leslie. This latest round of bloodletting comes after weeks of public demonstrations and counter-demonstrations that were reportedly sparked by renewed vows from pro-something leaders to get the thing they want, which was completely opposite of the thing the anti-something leaders wanted.
Now, broadcasts have shown rallies, riots in the streets, and even some bodies strewn around the Capitol.
That's right. The pro-somethings and anti-somethings leaders have both said they've experienced severe casualties that should make it clear that the side they don't like is the real aggressor and root cause of all the bad things currently going on.
I see. I assume these two groups have been fighting each other for an amount of time that's difficult for most people to appropriately appreciate and understand.
Yes, this conflict started way back when the person who would go on to create the pro-somethings group did a thing that, while seeming minor to most people, was deeply unsettling and divisive to a person who would go on to create the anti-somethings group. Ever since, both groups have decided they don't like each other.
Right. And is any group showing signs of backing down from the thing they're fighting for?
No, especially after both sides released statements today. Here's a translator for the pro-somethings group.
We cannot sit idly by while our people are killed by an enemy determined to do a thing we oppose.
And the response from the anti-somethings group.
We will never stop doing the thing our enemies oppose.
While sounds like this, whatever all this is, isn't simply going to blow over, how has the international community responded?
Well, members of the diplomatic community have unilaterally condemned the latest escalation of violence. They've called for both groups to lay down their weapons and resume talks. Before agreeing they cannot agree and start killing each other once again at a later date.
And where can people find out more about this complicated issue they will never truly understand?
Books, newspaper articles, journals, documentaries, talking to those involved, dedicating the rest of your life to understand the conflict. Really anything that sheds light on the conflict's historical background and the social, governmental, geopolitical, educational, healthcare, sanitation, economic, gender, flow of illegal arms, ethnicity, and religious issues around it.
Fascinating. That's OPR's Charles Dearborn. Thank you, Charles.
You're welcome.
Authorities in Seattle have launched a citywide manhunt for what they believe is a dangerous serial killer. OPR correspondent Remy Berglund joins us from there now. Hello, Remy.
Hi, Leslie.
So what has led police to believe they may have a serial killer on their hands?
Well, 6 bodies have been found so far, all mutilated and then discarded in various perplexing ways that have left the community here stunned. But it's been the similarities between the victims that's most disturbing.
All have been dismembered. Their arms and legs wrapped in waxed paper and dumped in parking lots with a bloody butcher's cleaver left at the scene.
That's Detective Greg Novak, who's leading the investigation. He says police have no suspects and no motive yet. But one thing they do all agree on, the killer is clearly gunning for the nickname, the parking lot butcher.
I mean, grinding up the flesh and stuffing it into casings made from the victim's own intestines, it's like, come on, we get it.
Clearly, the psychopath is trying too hard.
Yeah, really heavy-handed. Police were hoping to catch this monster before he went too over the top. That wasn't until the 6th victim was discovered this morning.
The body was found skewered, grilled, and placed next to a side of potato salad. Oh, for God's sakes.
Now, this 6th victim was actually found in a parking garage nearly 4 miles away from where the victim was last seen. Initially, police believed this might not have been the work of the same individual. That is until they found a note at the scene written on what looked to be a butcher's ticket that read, "This technically counts as a parking lot.
Oh, geez.
Call me the parking lot butcher."
Well, let's hope the police can put an end to these contrived murders soon. Thank you, Remy.
Thank you.
This has been an OPR Crime Report.
And to all the families affected by this error, we sincerely apologize.
That was Northwestern Memorial Hospital's Deputy Chief of Medicine, Dr. Jeremy Quinn. This morning, he apologized on behalf of the entire medical team after a couple's newborn baby was accidentally switched with a random man in the hospital's emergency room. OPR's Marcy Hammond has been following this story. Hello, Marcy.
Hi, Leslie.
So, Marcy, when exactly did this terrible mistake happen?
Well, that's what makes this so scary. 18 years ago, Brianna Welkin left the maternity ward with what she thought was her newborn son, Brian.
Did he look different than his siblings? Yeah, a little. But he had the same dark hair and big goofy smile. But also he was 5'9", 245.
That same day, James Ringgold left with what he thought was his 63-year-old father, Jeff, who was recovering from a heart attack. Both were wrong.
When they looked at Dad's heart, we thought it was a miracle. They told us his heart looked as healthy as a baby's. Turns out, it was a baby's.
Wow, as a parent myself, I have to say this is terrifying. Did either family question the situation?
Well, both were suspicious at first, but administrators at Northwestern Hospital repeatedly told the parents a mistake like this was impossible. According to the Welkins, their new baby cried too much, had difficulty breathing, and was covered in body hair. But when they asked the doctors,
The hospital said the body hair was hereditary, and the crying was because he was just colicky. They told me to try breastfeeding.
and then there was the Ringgolds, who thought their dad was too small, was constantly defecating himself, and couldn't support his own head with his neck.
They said he was just getting older and suggested we think about putting him in a home.
I see. So how exactly did they know something was wrong then?
Well, both parties eventually accepted the situation. What else could they do?
Sure.
Then almost 2 decades later, right after James Ringgold's supposed 81-year-old father, Jeff, went through puberty, the family decided it was time to take a DNA test. That test, of course, revealing that who they thought was their dad was actually 18-year-old Brian Welkin, and their actual 81-year-old father, Jeff, was now living with the Welkins and was about to graduate high school.
It's every parent's worst nightmare. Aside from apologizing, what has Northwestern done to address this?
Well, frankly, they haven't done very much. According to the hospital's president, the mistake was made during a, quote, different time. Now, he says, babies are given wristbands that help doctors track them, and patients admitted to the emergency room are given large headbands that indicate they are not a baby. That said, according to the Welkins, there are still mistakes.
Yes, the odds of this happening are less than 0.01%. But in 2018, a couple's newborn baby was accidentally swapped with an ambulance. So it's still not perfect.
Wow, well, Marcy, I think the only question left to ask is the one that's on everyone's mind. Did the Welkins circumcise an old man with a fully grown penis?
They did.
Well, I think it's high time the hospital puts that foreskin right back where it belongs, free of charge. Thank you, Marcy.
Okay.
Oh, you thought that was all the news for the day? Guess again, muchacho. Here's what else you need to know today. The Federal Trade Commission is cracking down today, announcing that it will be seeking an injunction that would require Facebook to break up a married couple's weird shared account. The Facebook account in question is that of both Lisa and Greg Raymer of Lincoln, Nebraska. Following an exhaustive 5-year investigation into the couple's account, the FTC is alleging the pair had engaged in a systematic effort to creep out friends and family with relentlessly upbeat posts in which they speak as if they were a single entity, and will argue that Facebook should split up the account as soon as possible in order to prevent the couple from merging it with a separate but equally weird account they have for their dog. And if you find yourself spending a little too much time on social media, a groundbreaking new study has found that working at work actually improves productivity. The study, conducted by the Department of Labor, found that the physical act of engaging in a productive job-related activity may greatly increase the amount of work accomplished during the workday, especially when compared with the more common practices of wasting time, fucking around, and just not working. Interesting. May have to give that a shot. And finally, if you're looking to spice up your at-home meals, Instapot has announced that their new popular multi-cooker will now come with a recipe book for easy weeknight IEDs. We've got one at the house and we love it. I whipped up a dirty bomb for the kids this weekend using nothing but some nails and ammonium nitrate, and it absolutely blew them away. I might even have to make another one to set off tonight. And that's it for The Topical today. I'm Leslie Price. Join us tomorrow for a look inside the stigma of breastfeeding. Would people be more accepting if we called it titty juicing? Until then, don't forget to like and subscribe to The Topical wherever you get your podcasts, just as God intended. See you tomorrow. The news doesn't stop just because this YouTube video has. For even more on all the worst things happening in the world right now, listen and subscribe to The Topical on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, you insatiable news freaks.